Hello, everyone. It's Professor Muldrow once again. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction of how Java uses a concept known as arrays. Arrays are a method by which you can store multiple values with just one name. To begin with, I will show you two ways you can declare an array in Java. Here's the first way. Just like variables, arrays need a type. In this case, it's double. But if you're going to declare an array, you need to put square brackets immediately after the type. The square brackets tell the compiler this is an array, not just a variable. An array needs a name. In this case, it's Panther. And then in this way of declaring the array, we use the keyword new. We use the type again, in this case, double. And then in the square brackets, we tell the compiler how many elements will be in this array. Now, in this particular example, I'm using a variable named weeks to represent how many elements are in this array. But the truth is, you can use either just a constant number, you can use a variable, you can use a math expression to indicate how many elements there are in an array. The other way to declare an array, if you know what the elements in it should be before you start, is this way. Once again, here is your type, here are the square brackets, here is a name, here is an equal sign, but now we put the actual values we want to be in the array in curly brackets and separated by commas. So this array, whose name is incred, will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements. And there are the 6 elements in that order. Now, the next thing you see in this code are 2 for loops. The first one is to prompt the user to enter data to be stored in the Panther array. And the second for loop will be to display each element of the Panther array. Let's take a look at the first loop. Now you'll notice this loop begins with 0, not with 1. And my loop variable x is being used as an index into this array. So it designates a specific element of the array to receive a value. Indexes in an array always begin with 0. They don't begin with 1. They begin with 0. So the index of the first element of an array is always 0. Always. That means the index of the last element of an array is always its length minus 1. The length of an array is the number of elements in an array. So as you can see, my loop starts at 0, and my loop condition is this: x less than Panther and a dot and the word length. Now, arrays in Java have a length feature, similar to the length feature that strings have in Java. The difference, however, is that for an array, you don't type parentheses after the word length. You just type the word length and that's it. So the length feature returns the number of elements in the array. I'll tell you right now, this Panther array will have 6 elements. That means the indexes for those 6 elements begin at 0 and end at 5. They don't end at 6, they end at 5. This is why we have a strictly less than as our loop condition. X strictly less than the length of the array. And the result of that first loop is this part of the output right here. I'm prompted to enter box office figures for each week of Black Panther, and I've typed them in here. Then this set of output is from the second for loop. where I'm displaying the box office for each week of Black Panther. And so I'm using each element of the array to display the box office of the movie for that week. Now then, another thing you can do with arrays is they can be passed as parameters to a function. As you see down here, I've created a function whose name is compare. Two of its parameters are double arrays. So there are the two double array parameters of this function. Here is where I'm calling this function. And the Panther array is the first parameter that will get sent to film 1. The incred array is the second parameter. It gets sent to film 2. Arrays are always passed by reference in Java. What that means is, if you pass an array as a parameter to a function, and that function makes changes to that array, even if it's just to one element, when that function is complete and we go back to whoever called the function, those changes made to the array will still be there. That's the difference between being passed by reference and being passed by value. A single value, like a variable, is always passed by value. If a parameter that's passed by value has its value changed in a function, when you go back to whoever called it, that change is wiped out, it's gone. But if something is passed by reference, like an array always is, arrays are always passed by reference. If a change is made to that array in the function or the method, when we return to where the method was called from, those changes will still be there. That's what passed by reference means. In this case, though, both arrays are not going to be changed. We're going to keep the values as they are. But you can also return an array from a method in Java. As you can see here, in the header or signature of this method, we have public static, and then instead of void, we have string and square brackets. That means that this method returns an array of strings. Specifically, it'll be the title of the movie that had the bigger box office for each week. And so when this method is done with whatever it's going to do, we're going to come back to main and display who had the bigger box office for each of the 6 weeks. Now, as I said before, this method is returning an array of strings. That's why when we call the method here, I've declared another array in main whose name is titles. It is an array of strings, and it gets the result of the compare method. Whatever array is returned by the compare method will be assigned to this array whose name is titles. And then when I display the elements of the array titles, I'm using a different type of for loop. This for loop right here is referred to as a for each loop. Here's how it works. Notice I declare a string variable as my loop variable. The variable's name is S. And then I have a colon and then titles. What this line is saying is for each element, call it S, in the array titles, print the name of the movie that had the bigger box office. The for each loop is a way to go through an array without having to worry about using indexes. See, if you use an invalid index in Java, you get an error known as an out of bounds error, and the program will crash. By using a for each loop, you don't have to worry about indexes. The for each loop will go through the array titles one element at a time until the array is all done. Java can figure out for itself when the array ends. You don't use indexes, you won't get an error. And the output of that for each loop is right here. This is your introduction to arrays. Please consult the textbook in Chapter 7, especially Chapter 7, Section 1, and the PowerPoints for Chapter 7 for more information you'll need to know on arrays. If you have any questions, please send me an email at kmuldrow@lbcc.edu.